So, when you think about Apple, what's the first thing that pops into your head? An iPhone, right? Or maybe a Mac, or an Apple Watch. But here's the thing. The real story behind Apple's insane dominance isn't just about the cool products they sell. Nope, it's about the massive economic empire they've built around them. So today, we're going to follow the money and really dig into how Apple built this trillion-dollar empire.
Okay, let's just start with a number that's, well, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. $1.1 trillion. That's how much money, in total billings and sales, flowed through Apple's App Store ecosystem in just 1 year, 2022. We're talking about an economic force bigger than the entire GDP of a lot of countries.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth does a company that we all know for its beautiful, shiny hardware build a digital force of nature this powerful? Well, the answer isn't as simple as just selling a bunch of apps. It's about a master plan, a carefully built strategy that's been in the works for decades.
To really get it, we have to look at Apple's core blueprint for dominance. And trust me, it goes way, way beyond just making pretty gadgets.
You know, this quote from our source material absolutely nails it. Apple isn't just a tech company, it's not just a design company, and it's not just a marketing company. It's this perfect fusion of all three, rolled into one. And that simple idea is the bedrock of their entire strategy.
Now, there's a key business term for this, and it's vertical integration. It sounds kind of jargony, but the idea is actually super simple. Apple controls everything: the hardware, your iPhone, the software, iOS, and the services like the App Store and iCloud. Because they own that entire stack, they can make sure it all just works together perfectly. It creates this seamless experience that their competitors find almost impossible to copy.
And that vertical integration, well, it powers this incredible winning formula. It all kicks off with their killer brand reputation that's constantly fed by nonstop innovation, which in turn creates that seamless ecosystem that you never want to leave. And all of that is blasted out to the world with some of the slickest marketing you'll ever see. The result? Insane customer loyalty. Each piece just makes the others stronger in this really powerful cycle.
Okay, so we get this strategy in theory, but what does this whole ecosystem actually look like when you start counting the cash? Let's zoom right in on the App Store, because this is where the scale becomes truly mind-bending.
All right, let's break down the jaw-dropping numbers behind that trillion-dollar App Store economy.
You know, the craziest part about this is just how fast it's growing. I mean, look at this. Back in 2019, the ecosystem was driving over $500 billion, which is already a huge number. But by 2022, just 3 years later, it had more than doubled to $1.1 trillion. That's not just growth, that's an explosion. We're talking steady growth between 27 and 29% every single year.
But here it is. This is probably the most surprising part of the entire story. When you actually break down that $1.1 trillion, it is not what you'd think. Only about 9% comes from what we think of as apps, digital goods and services. A staggering 81%, that's $910 billion, comes from selling physical goods and services.
And that right there shows you the real power of the App Store. It's not just a digital shop. It's basically become the remote control for the real-world economy. We're talking about ordering your Uber, booking a flight, getting your groceries delivered, shopping on Amazon. The iPhone is now the main gateway to modern commerce.
So this brings us to the most counterintuitive part of Apple's entire business model. Let's take a look at how the money really moves around inside this ecosystem, because, again, it's probably not what you're expecting. Okay, get this. This is the crucial point. Of that entire $1.1 trillion, Apple takes absolutely no commission on over 90% of it. All that money goes straight to the developers and the businesses. So when you buy a pair of shoes on the Nike app or order dinner through DoorDash, Apple doesn't see a dime from that sale.
So why in the world would they do that? Because Apple's strategy isn't to tax every little transaction. Their goal is way bigger. It's to make their platform, iOS, so valuable, so essential for businesses, and so easy for users that nobody ever wants to leave. They're not just running a store, they're creating the center of gravity for the entire digital economy. That's where the real power is.
But of course, when you build an empire this big and this successful, you're going to paint a huge target on your back. You're going to attract a lot of attention and a lot of competition. So who's out there trying to take them down?
You see, building an empire is one thing. Defending it is a whole other ballgame. So let's take a look at the competitive world Apple has to navigate every single day. And the competition is absolutely fierce, on every single front. In smartphones, they're in a constant battle with giants like Samsung and Google. In the computer world, they're fighting legacy players like HP and Dell. And even in wearables, where they look so dominant, companies like Samsung and Garmin are always right there on their heels. It's a true multi-front war.
So you have this constant balancing act. On one side, you have these huge positive forces, like Apple's legendary brand loyalty and that sticky, seamless ecosystem. But pushing back from the other side are some serious negative forces, that intense competition we just talked about, the ever-present threat of an economic downturn hitting premium product sales, and of course, growing regulatory pressure from governments all over the world.
All of this really leads to the ultimate question, doesn't it? For a company of this staggering scale, where do you even go from here? I mean, how do you keep growing when you're already one of the biggest companies in the history of the world?
Well, the answer, as it has always been for Apple, is to go out and find the next revolution. So let's take a quick glimpse into the future that they're trying to build right now.
A perfect example is their massive bet on augmented reality. Even before they've officially launched a product, analysts are already projecting that AR glasses could be a multi-billion-dollar business for them within just a few years. Apple is always planting seeds for its next big thing.
And all of this feeds back into what you could call the Apple flywheel. It's this beautiful, self-reinforcing cycle. It starts with great products that attract loyal customers. Then, those loyal customers dive into the rich app ecosystem. That huge user base attracts the best developers in the world, and those developers create incredible, innovative apps that, you guessed it, make the products even better. And the wheel just keeps spinning, faster and faster. And that leaves us with one final, big, provocative thought. With a flywheel spinning this fast and an ecosystem that moves over $1 trillion a year, has Apple's empire become too big and just too woven into the fabric of our lives to ever actually fail? That is the trillion-dollar question.